Welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about live plants. I know a lot of times I kind of gloss over it. I've done it for so many years, and the best way I can explain it is I'm kind of that gardener down the road that might have an awesome yard and you're a little bit jealous of, but I'm not entering into the state fair, check out the rose I grew, or anything like that. So I want to keep it down on a easy to understand level today. I'm going to start with a little bit of background. I am a master aquatic horticulturist. I have been growing live plants for now it's like 12 years. I've flowered a bunch of species. I've grown a ton. I typically never went too far down the rabbit hole and chased down plants kind of in the $70 or more range. That doesn't mean I don't have knowledge of it, but in general, I never paid the money for marble Anubius and that kind of stuff back in the day when it was super expensive. And now that we can get it, I'm just not that interested in it. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I'm going to answer questions, going to cover some basics, and then I'm going to take you through the website. And I think the reason why I'm going to the website, twofold. I want to sell a bunch of stuff. Second thing, it's going to be a nice thing. It's kind of like a list of plants I can talk about, right? And you guys can definitely chime in, and like Bracken already asked, are we going to talk about red plants? And the answer to that is yes, we are going to talk about red plants, but we don't sell a ton of red plants. And the reasoning for that, like we can start there, is that most of the red plants are stem plants. That's not too scary, but a lot of stem plants, they kind of convert. And so when we're buying plants from a farm, they've been grown out of water. We then take them, we put them underwater. And from there, we might grow them a couple inches or so, and then we send them to you. When you get them, you're going to have a plant that's got a couple inches that we grew, and then maybe 5 inches that they grew that looks different. Okay, and all that's going to kind of die back, and you're going to get this new growth. Well, if it lands in a system or in someone's hands that doesn't really know what they're doing, you might get the struggling plant that then really struggles, right? So it's not struggling, it's just transitioning. And then if we don't give it nutrients it needs or enough light, it's just going to wilt back and die. And sometimes people that aren't used to that are going to see a plant like that, and the bottom part is converting, and they're assuming it's dying. They're going to do these drastic actions like, cut into the stem there and replant it, and then that makes it lose its root system. And, so there's all these things. So that's why we typically don't sell a ton of red plants. It's not that we can't get them. It's that we want to make sure that the reviews that come back after we sell a plant are positive. Now, we have tried in the past, and we've tried, offering disclaimers and all that. I think we need to build out better education, and we're working on that. It's always a touchy thing when you're selling a live thing and then someone doesn't have success with it. And that like you have 200 of them sitting in a tank flourishing, and you just sent one and now it's not doing well. And there is someone in between, the post office. Maybe they killed it. Maybe the person on the other side doesn't know what they're doing. I don't know. But we give the benefit of the doubt. Typically we end up replacing that. And so red plants become kind of a loss leader for us. And yeah, so overall though, we're going to start with some basic things here. I don't believe that it really matters what substrate you use. I've grown tanks in everything. And I haven't shown a lot of things on YouTube lately, like in the last 3 years or so. I haven't shown much planted tanks and all that. I kind of went through a really heavy phase where I was really doing plants. And you guys have seen it a little bit, and I'm not even going to attempt to say like, oh, that's my best work, but like the wife's tank, where I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing and grow some plants, and then I grew them really well, but it was boring to me just because I was like, it's getting back to being a lot of work. I don't enjoy that. And then maybe you look at like the screensaver tank we have on the website where you see, all the plants pearling and that kind of stuff. I myself have never been huge into aquascaping. And when I say aquascaping, that might mean a very high level of competition. That being said, I like my tanks to look good and I like to position where plants go, but I'm not setting up a scape to tear it down 3 days after the picture like kind of the aquascaping does. So I'm all into sustainability. Can I keep this going? I like minimal maintenance, and so all the advice I give today will be that. So for most of you, that will hit home. You're going to go, yes, that sounds like me. I have to go to work every day. I can't spend 5 hours. I don't have $1 million to spend on this. I don't want to have to test for ferts every single day. All that stuff is going to apply to what we're going to talk about. So I believe that substrate is not that big of a factor. Now, Can you get a little bit of benefit out of something like an ADA soil or a fluval soil? Yes, a little bit. Can you get a little bit of benefit out of maybe a dirted tank? Yes. But with all these things where you get a benefit, you also get a negative too. And that might be extra ammonia. It might be way more nutrients than you can use. Like it's common to see someone get this high-end substrate and then load their tank with Anubius and can't figure out why they have an algae farm. Well, they have a really slow-growing plant and they have tons of nutrients. You put those two together and you've made an algae farm. So you need to know what we're using. Just like if you're a gardener, you want to use the right soils for the right plants, and there's not one best soil. And then at the same time, you need to know what's already in your water. A lot of people, someone in the chat earlier was saying that, oh, I have a lot of red plants in my tank, so I dose lots of iron. That might be true, but first you want to make sure you don't have a lot of iron in your water. If you're on a well, a lot of times you get a lot of iron, or just some parts of the country have a lot of iron. And so we get into these generalizations where red plants do like iron, that's true, but we might already have more iron. Like I have basically nothing in my water, so I would maybe dose some iron if I had lots of red plants. And typically I diagnose that by viewing a deficiency first, like, oh, these reds are more of a pink, I really want them to be dark red. And then if you really want to push it, you can make them more of a purple color with lots and lots and lots of light and iron. But I wouldn't jump to conclusions right away there. So, substrates, yes, could we use a fluorite or something like that to boost iron? We could. We could use an Eco-Complete. We could use crushed coral. We can use normal gravel. We can use pink gravel. In fact, that's on one of my videos I want to do down the future, is use like whatever the internet considers the worst possible gravel and do a very, very nice aquascape with it to prove that it can be done. Now, just like anything in life, proving something can be done doesn't mean it was the easiest way to get there, but so many people do feel like they're limited. Oh, I don't have the right thing, just like, so maybe pink gravel reviewed as you can't grow plants and that you'd have to be insane, right? I don't think that's any more true than, oh, you can grow plants in sand. Like I actually view it harder to grow plants in sand than it would be pink gravel. And so, but that being said, any substrate, you should be able to have a full-on plant tank. You're just going to have different challenges, whether it's excess nutrients, whether it's, the sand's compacting, it's really hard to get good root growth, whether it's the pink gravel and it's totally inert and you're just at that disadvantage, they're all in play there. And then when it comes to lighting, I believe we're at a point now where most lighting is so good. I fear that like when a Fluval 4.0 comes out, it's going to be a hard sales pitch of like, what is it that's that much better? Oh, it's brighter? It's brighter than I need to be already. Like I'm using a Fluval 3.0 on a 40-inch tall tank. And like on smaller tanks, it's really bright. And so without injecting CO2, you kind of run into some algae problems, and even Nicru lights, Aquaneat lights, a lot of these things are very, very bright for what they are. And then with the kits, we're getting the opposite. They are still LED, but they're dialing them down so much so they don't grow algae. Because in the standard world, like online, in reviews, if something grows algae, it is now a bad product. And so they're hedging their bets against that. But when it comes to lighting, someone was asking me what's the maximum amount of lighting, and that would be more towards 12-ish hours, maybe as many as 14, but you're really starting to get to where you're not going to get much benefit out of it. You'll start growing more algae than you will plants. Now, maybe starting at 8 hours and working your way somewhere between 8 and 12 might be a good situation for you to be in. Give yourself some leeway on either end so you could bump it up a little bit, bump it down. And lighting and photons, they work differently than I had always thought. I was taught by Kara Wade, who I actually saw at the AGA this last weekend. I didn't even think about that last weekend was the AGA, and now I'm talking about plants. It's purely coincidence. Should have tied that in better. I'll think of that next time. But she taught me about lighting, and she's the one that worked on Build My LEDs and that kind of stuff. And she's kind of regarded as someone that knows a thing or two about lighting. And when it comes to light, we think of it incorrectly. We think of it like sun rays. And really, we should be thinking about it like raindrops. So if we pour a bunch of water onto something, the water collects, right? Whereas sun rays, we don't really see it building up. We just think of it as a stagnant thing. And so with lighting, we can play with it a little bit. If we had really, really intense light for 4 hours, that might be the same as half as much light at 8 hours, right? So really, really intense rain outside, really coming down, raining cats and dogs, might be the same amount of water on the ground as 8 hours of half as much intensity, right? And that's kind of how we need to think about lighting. Now, we could do a whole episode on nerding out about lighting, and maybe we'll do that again someday, but there's things that come into play like lighting restrike. What is that? Like when you have multiple sources and lighting kind of comes in and hits the glass walls, it's going to restrike off of that, and it's going to come in and it's going to hit, photons hit each other, and when they hit each other they bounce again. And so you can get areas of your tank that's actually getting no light based on the way you set up your lighting, because the photons actually have to travel. And so things like restrike and all that are going to affect how you light your tank. That's why when we add a second light to our tank, even if they're the same thing, we don't necessarily double our light. It's technically about adding 90% more instead of 100% more because of the inefficiencies of lighting restrike. There's all that kind of stuff we could delve into, but we want to keep it much more a simple level here. And so for the most part, if you've bought yourself a decent planted light, you will be okay. There are some red herrings out there that are like, oh geez, that's from a 5-year model ago and it's not that good. But if you're buying anything that was kind of made in the last 2 or 3 years and it's specifically targeted towards plants, and you've done any research of like name of light, planted tank reviews, you Google that in and boom, you're going to get at least a few people's opinions, and you'll see the tanks they've grown and you go, hey, if they can do that, I at least know it's capable, maybe I'll be able to do that. And you can make your own decision on warranties and features you want and price point and that kind of stuff. It all comes down to what fits your budget. So, someone asked, what about underwater LEDs? So I haven't played a lot with it, but there are many, I've seen many stores do it, and out of the country I've seen it being done as well. In theory, lighting is kind of lighting, and if you provide lighting even underwater, that will also help grow some plants. It's one of the old school ways we used to get light to plants, where you got these stem plants, they're growing up tall, they start shading out the bottom. You could actually put a light behind the aquarium and shine to the front. It was horrible to view, but it would get the light into the kind of undercarriage of plants and help them from dying off as quickly, and could be helpful. So, but yeah, lighting in general, we've had enough lighting for the last 30 years. Lighting's only getting better. All the plants, for the most part, that are on my website were grown with very, very old T12 bulbs that are this big and really didn't put out a lot of light. And nowadays, we still grow them. So yes, our plants might be more accustomed. Like in my tank at the warehouse, they're going to be used to getting a decent amount of light. So when they go to your house, if you don't provide it that, you're going to notice them dying back. But that's going to happen regardless. So, all right. CO2, we should probably cover that. For the most part, 90% of plants won't require CO2. So 9 out of 10 things that you ever play with as a plant won't require CO2. What CO2 does, and this is my own general explanation again, is it speeds up how fast it grows. So if I always use the gym example, and I've used this example for 10 plus years in the store. If I go to the gym and I work out every single day, I'm going to build muscle mass, right? For the most part. You know, if I'm faking working out or whatever, maybe I wouldn't. But if I'm making a dedicated effort to work out and grow muscles, I will probably do that. If I take steroids, I will do that at a much faster pace. Now, when I stop taking steroids, you will lose that muscle mass much faster as well. The same thing happens in a planted aquarium. We can grow plants at a moderate rate, assuming we're providing the lighting and the nutrients and we're keeping algae at bay. And then when we apply CO2, that all happens faster, right? But also, if we run out of light or we run out of nutrients, we can kill them faster because everything's happening faster. They grow faster, they die faster, all of that. It used to be that we assumed that CO2 was the answer to everything. And so what happened was, on the planted tank forums, where we all used to hang out back in the day, we were all planted tank enthusiasts. So we'd have the best light money can buy, and maybe we were buying from ahsupply.com. We got our German reflectors, and we bought our power compacts, and we really spent a bunch of money on lighting, and then we were mixing up our own fertilizers. And because we had those two, we had really good lighting and we had fertilizer. The only thing that was ever really missing from our tanks was a bunch of CO2 because we had a ton of light and we had a ton of fertilizer and we didn't have nearly as much CO2. So then on the forums, it became commonplace of like, you need to get CO2. You need to get CO2. And everyone would. And when they would get the CO2, all of a sudden their algae would go away. And so then it kind of became this thing of when you get CO2, you don't have algae. But that only made sense if you had the other two components already in place. Nowadays, we fast forward a bunch, we're not all hanging out on the same forums, and we don't all have the same technology, and we weren't all researching the same light and the same fertilizers, and we were all EI dosing. Now, we might have Leaf Zone from PetSmart, we might have a ZoomEd aquarium light that we bought or got with a used tank, and now we have algae issues, and the answer is still, get CO2, right? But in those specific things, like Leaf Zone is a pretty weak fertilizer, and a ZoomEd planted lighting is more built for a terrarium than it is an aquarium, and you would highly unlikely be limited by CO2, right? But you wouldn't know that because we're not a highly specialized group. Now we're just in a Facebook group, or we're online, we're watching a video, we're doing our own research, and we don't know the group of people we're in. You know, so it might be that if you were a professional NFL player, it might be the secret is this jockstrap to making the playoffs, right? But that same thing does not translate to your high school football team. Like, it's just not at that level where tiny little tweaks are the difference. Instead, it's a much bigger thing of like, oh, at the high school level, practicing a ton, getting teammates working together, you know, having decent equipment, maybe not the highest end thing, all that kind of stuff is much more important. So those basic things, and that's what we're going to cover today, is these basics of, you know, decent lighting and a fertilizer. Now, for the purpose of all of this stuff I'm going to talk about, I'm going to recommend using the Easy Green line just because I know it like the back of my hand. We developed it. It is good. It's probably the best return on your money. That being said, all plants can be grown with any other fertilizer technically. And I say technically because something like an API Leaf Zone might take gallons and gallons and gallons to equal a much smaller bottle of a different product, right? And if you're outside of the US, the ones I can recommend that I believe are the closest to Easy Green would be like the Tropica all-in-one fertilizer. Dennerley has an all-in-one fertilizer. I don't know if ADA does at this point, but there's probably some other ones. But kind of look at percentages and compare and go, hey, that's within the realm of the same thing. You know, think about it like, I can't buy Corey's cheeseburger, but you could look at the picture and go, hey, okay, so it's got lettuce, it's got onions, it's got tomatoes, it's got cheese, it's got bacon, got that. Okay, this burger's got the same thing, roughly the same, even though it's another country. You can kind of reverse engineer it, and you know, if you see that the bacon is this thick, and then you look at API Leaf Zone and you see that their bacon is, you know, like cut with a laser, you know it's not the same thing, obviously. So, all right. We're going to delve into the website, I suppose, and we'll come back outside of that. I'm kind of watching the chat out of the side of my eye here, and if I see stuff like how do I choose a high-tech lighting setup, any suggestions, like that's a pretty advanced question because choosing a light would depend on the size of an aquarium, because distance from light to substrate matters and how much, you know, so even though we think of it like pouring water, we don't realize that if we poured water from 1,000 feet up, some of that water is going to evaporate before it hits the ground. Same thing with light. With water, we shine light through it. The further it has to go, the more light it filters out. That's why when we look at the ocean, it looks blue. We filtered out all the other colors but blue for the most part, and that's where it gets that blue color. So it's kind of a deeper thing here. We're going to switch to the website view, if you will. And we will double check to make sure the mic is working, because in the past we've had some problems with that, and I haven't done anything but just my own talking head here for many months. But I did test it this morning, and it should be working. All right. With the power of magic, we should have a different scene. And here is our current website. Oh, what is this? We have a chat showing up? I don't even know how it does that. Let me see if I can turn that off. Is that window capture? Chat box. We're going to turn that off for now. That was an old setting. All right, so we have the website. If you've never been to our website, shame on you. It's the coolest place to hang out. That's not true. But even if you don't live in our country, you could at least go and play with like the Murphy camera, which is down here. And you would have a live camera of Murphy. You can see there, Caitlin is cleaning the aquarium right now as we speak. And Murphy is waiting to be fed even more today. Yes, I was there late last night swapping the camera out. We have a new, more high definition camera. I took out some of the plants. We're going to further take out some more so that he's got more swim space. And yes, you can see that there's a Zis filter on the right hand side. You can see the guppies in the tank now. Lots of stuff to enjoy there. But we're going to focus on the live plants today. And here we are. So the first thing I want to show you is that there are ways to break down lights on our website. And this can be done, it's a little bit harder to find, but even on the mobile version, you can start choosing by like, oh, low light plants, and it will resort for you. Or red plants. So low light and red even technically bring up some options. You can get rid of, the low light. So we've got sorting features. Now we've only got about 60 different species of plants. I have access to thousands of species, but these are my handcrafted, chosen plants that I think most people will be successful with. Now, there's lots of other plants, but if 8 out of 10 of you will kill it, I'm not sure I want to be in the business of selling you plants you're going to kill. So I've focused on ones that I think you'll be successful with. But, so as the title stated today, what plants, where, which fish, all that kind of stuff. And I think we're going to be able to go through that relatively quickly here. So even something... So I guess I could chime in on this. The way the plants are naturally sorted on our website is most sold will be at the top. So Vallisneria are the #1 sold plant currently. All right. And so there's a good reason for that. I've used it in a lot of tanks and I've spoken about it at length many times in many videos, and I've written articles about it. And that is, I love it because if you were only ever going to buy one aquarium plant, I would buy Vallisneria. Once it gets established and it starts growing, it will fill up your whole tank and you get this nice jungle look to it. Something like this. This is from a tank at the shop, right? We've got a lot of neon tetras and we've got those Vals in there. Looks good. The other benefits to Val is it will grow in sand technically once it finally gets established. It doesn't like it as much as normal gravel, but it will grow. And it's a native to like Lake Tanganyika and Lake Malawi, basically African cichlids. You can have it with African cichlids. It can normally take a beating of a goldfish as well. And so it's a very hardy plant that will reproduce for you so long as we give it nutrients and we give it light. So, kind of that simple overview there. Vallisneria can grow as tall as 8 feet if you went for the jungle Val version. This technically is Vallisneria Italian, which basically means it gets about 4 feet. And there's Vallisneria americana, there's Vallisneria spiralis, corkscrew Val. There's all these different types. We focus on a couple of them because when we offered you 5 different ones, you just email and go, which one do I buy? And so the ones that I use in all my aquariums is this normal Vallisneria right here. And yeah, so fairly easy plant, assuming we have some light and we have some nutrients going in. Nothing too crazy to know about it there. Root tabs go a long way. The next one would be Pogostemon Stellatus Octopus. It's a big mouthful, but it's a good plant for if you're breeding fish or so it is a stem plant, and to replant it, you just cut it and stick it in the gravel. It'll grow some new roots. You could float it, and then it grows all these weird roots that will just hang down. It looks kind of weird, but it looks fairly decent when it kind of grows in here. You can see, as I've zoomed in on this picture, you can see that we do inject CO2 in all the warehouse aquariums, so we're trying to convert it as fast as possible for you. And so all the bubbles you see on the leaves is the plant releasing oxygen because it's happy, and we've injected CO2 to make that happen. Yeah, stem plant, very fast grower, gets more spindly when it fully grows in. Great plant. You can almost neglect it. I say almost because you'll get a real bad algae farm if you don't take care of it at all. But other than that, does pretty good. Yeah, and I would say this is more of a community tank plant, not so much African cichlids or goldfish, that type of thing. It's more of just a general, yeah, you got community fish, you got shrimp, all that kind of stuff. Monte Carlo. So We sell a ton of it. I don't recommend a ton of it, but we sell a ton of it because we have a great price on it. At $5.99, people are buying this 20 at a time. And why are they buying so many Monte Carlo at a time? That's because it's a carpeting plant. And so it's going to give you that nice carpet effect on your gravel or your substrate. And that's that lawn that a lot of people see in the aquascapes that they kind of lust after. Now, Monte Carlo is one of the easier to grow carpeting plants. And the way I personally recommend to plant this, which is different than everyone else, I personally recommend planting the pot into the gravel and just letting the, kind of all the parts that have grown over the sides of that pot lay on the gravel. Eventually they'll root and just spread out. And so you can see in some of these different pictures here that, see how it's kind of expanded and wants to grow out? That it would do right into your gravel. And same with this picture here. And so that's the way I personally recommend doing it. Pot the whole pot, get it to spread really well, then go back and cut that pot out if you don't like the way it looks, but it should grow in well enough. Now, this is a plant that you don't want a ton of digging fish in, definitely not goldfish, definitely not African cichlids. This is purely that I'm going for an aquascape look. So, I would say medium to high light is kind of required. It will take some water fertilizer, but really you need either a good substrate or, and in addition, root tabs. It wants to get most of its food from those roots. And they only get roots this big. So another tip, if you're gonna plant this stem by stem, get yourself some good tweezers because your hands will make too big of a hole and it'll just keep floating out. So you need tweezers to really get it in there. Java ferns, a different plant, right? So Java fern is great for anything that's going to dig a lot. So the polar opposite of what we just had. Also is a low light plant. So it literally is the polar opposite here. It is a rhizome plant though. I don't know if this picture will show it off at all. Apparently not. But the rhizome of this thing needs to be above the gravel, or ideally this is best suited tied or glued onto wood or rock. And so that makes it really movable. So you can go, oh, I'm going to put it here for this month, and then I'm going to move it to the back corner as it grows, or whatever you want to do. Liquid fertilizer is really what you want to use. A lot of potassium helps. Easy Green is high in potassium. We basically built Easy Green to really make plants like this super duper easy. And yeah, what else can I talk about? When it comes to this plant, let's see if I can see anything. A little bit. Let's see if I can get it to, okay. So right on the screen in the center of that picture, you can see those little brown dots. Those little brown dots are, I guess, seeds or spores or whatever you want to call the starts of Java ferns. When this plant gets distressed, so meaning it's not getting enough food or enough light, it thinks it's going to die, those seeds will sprout into baby little Java fern plants. And from there, you could pull those off and plant them. So one of the ways you could propagate this plant is to pull a whole leaf off that had those seeds on it, and it will get no more food. It instantly goes into, oh no, we're going to die mode, and make a bunch of little plants, and you could attach those to things. One of the ways to propagate. The other way is let that rhizome just grow along and make cuts. And so those seeds, a lot of times people don't know what they are, they freak out. Nothing to worry about. That's a normal reproduction mode. If they sprout, it's usually a sign that maybe it's not getting enough light or it's getting starved of nutrients. And a lot of times what people don't think about, this is a very slow growing plant. It's common for it to get outcompeted by faster growing plants. So maybe you had this and you had that Pogostemon Stellatus octopus we looked at a couple plants ago. That grows really fast, eats a ton of food, maybe not leaving anything on the table for the Java fern. So that's something to think about. All right, what else we got? I'm going to take a look at the chat here because I'm sure some people have come up with some questions. Java fern is great in a goldfish or shabunkin tank? Definitely. Anything that's going to dig a lot, it doesn't have a good taste, it can take kind of a beating, if you will. Yeah. Can you just stop gravel vacuuming as a substitute for root tabs in highly stocked aquariums? Kind of, yes. There's going to be some nutrients you wouldn't supply, just so it wouldn't come from the fish food. But for the most part, I don't recommend gravel vacuuming planted tanks. Maybe getting some loose debris off the top if it's really getting a, kind of mucky in there. If a fish swims and it wafts stuff up, then yes. Otherwise, I would say no. And so what I like to do is I like to leave, if you have a plant, I like to make kind of a big circle around, like a 6-inch circle. And if there's no other plants around it, I'll go ahead and gravel vac around there. But in that 6 inches right around it, I wouldn't. And as these plants get bigger, big swords, big crypts, their roots will extend the whole tank. But I do like to keep things looking relatively tidy. And once you have a bunch of plants in there, you won't see the substrate anyway. And so likely you won't have to do any gravel vacuuming, which is a nice perk. Doesn't mean you won't have to do any water changes at all. You still got to monitor that, but you might not have to be touching the substrate. So, you know, if you don't like doing that, that's one thing. I personally like to gravel vac. I find it to be very satisfying, kind of like mowing the lawn. Once that lawn's mowed, like, wow, my yard looks great. And then the next day, you're like, oh, it doesn't look great. It doesn't look freshly mowed. I just like that freshly kind of cleaned look in my aquarium, and I get that from actually servicing it. So I enjoy it. Welcome, Dave Yang, joining the team. I appreciate it. Became a member. All right, let's get back into some of these plants because we got 60 to go and we've done about 4, right? So, cannot gravel vacuuming cause a biofilm? Not directly. I mean, anything could cause a biofilm, though, but directly not those. Or like not directly, as in, I wouldn't say, oh, you have a biofilm, it's because you didn't gravel vac. Like, there is almost anything. It's kind of like saying, does Snickers bars make you gain weight? Like, well, yes, but so does every other food on the planet. So you wouldn't be like, oh, that guy's fat, clearly eats too many Snickers. I could have eaten way too many Reese's peanut butter cups. Same thing, right? All right, let's jump back into that website here. And we'll talk about, someone's asking about carbon. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Anubius Petite is on deck. So this, I'm going to go to this picture right here. It's a little plant, and by little I mean the leaves stay pretty small. It's an Anubius, which means it's a rhizome plant, much like the Java fern we talked about a little bit before. And we want to attach it to wood or rock, and it stays fairly compact, so you can get this nice, dense growth. It almost looks like a carpet over rocks and wood, and you can use that to make different, I don't have any anymore, unfortunately, but different rocks and wood, different hardscape elements look like one big long rock or piece of wood. And so it brings some continuity to your scapes or your tank, especially if you have 2 different types of wood, or you can kind of repurpose that SpongeBob SquarePants that, you know, your son or daughter or wife or husband or you bought. And now you might have leveled up and like, maybe, you know, the paint flaked off that SpongeBob and he looks like zombie SpongeBob. And you just put a plant on him and pretty soon it's just like, oh no, that's just a, you know, like a Chia Pet version of SpongeBob and it looks pretty good. Eventually you can fully engulf it and you wouldn't even know what's there. But Anubius Petite typically is a little expensive at $9.99. You don't get a whole lot and it's very slow growing. But when it comes to really slow growing plants, what's nice is it also dies really slowly. So that means if you're going on vacation a lot, you're out of town a lot, you forget to fertilize a lot, you know, you're like, oh, it's looking a little brown or looking a little yellow. Oh, give it some food and it'll perk back up over time. So it takes a long time to grow, takes a long time to kill. If you're starting to kill it, it's going to take a while to bring it back to. That's one thing I haven't said in a long time. In my opinion, it takes about 2 weeks to see any change in an aquarium when it comes to plants. So if you change fertilizer, you change CO2, you change lighting, all these things, you know, like, oh, I'm going to fix my algae this weekend. You won't know the effects of all the work you've done for about 2 weeks and things have kind of settled down. So that's how I view any of that kind of stuff. All right, what's next? We've got Cryptocoryne Wendetii. So this, okay, so there's a little bit of a story here. I only say Cryptocoryne Wendetii when really I know we're selling reds. But every once in a blue moon, our vendor will screw up and send us greens. And so in this picture, what you're actually seeing is an immersed grown Crypt Wendetii red. So let's unpack that a little bit. Immersed means it's been grown out of the water, okay? And then it is a red form, but it looks green when it's grown out of water. And let's see if there's any good examples on this. Nope, it's all reflections. So all those leaves are going to die back, and then this plant's going to look radically different when it comes back. Let me show you. So you can see here all this texture, and the bronzy and the red. Now this is in a tank where I was not fertilizing. Not even root tabs at this point. It was just straight up gravel and fish poop. So it didn't turn super red, more of a bronzy color. Is that the same picture twice? No, slightly different picture. You can see some other crypts here. There's a different crypt in the foreground, but again, really textured leaf. Now, if I specifically dose root tabs and maybe some iron in that water, you can get some really nice deep reds out of that. That's typically what people want, and it's one of the few crypts that will turn red. Start talking about those red plants. In between, if we're kind of halfway to dosing enough, we'll get these bronzy-ish colors, and I kind of like that color, and I like it to kind of bounce around. It kind of gives me an indicator of how much fertilizer am I doing, and so, you know, if you put fertilizer in today and you're like, I want them really red. If in 3 days they don't look really red, don't put more, remember? It takes about 2 weeks. So if in like a couple of weeks you're going, yeah, it's just not doing as well as I want it to, then make an adjustment again and kind of wait 2 weeks per adjustment to go, okay, because if you dose too much iron, you're going to get way too much hair algae growing. And I got to say, it is getting hot. It's 85 in here now. It's getting hot. Had a hot week here, and I started the day at 83. We've raised 2 degrees. Whew, getting hot. All right, so that is one you're going to plant in the gravel. It will make little runners under and then pop up a new plant. Relatively slow grower. Can take a long time to settle in. Notorious for melting back, so it's notorious for coming in, like we said, where it looks like this. All that's going to melt back, and then from the depths of the death are going to come back this great plant. So, you know that when you're buying plants, you're buying basically roots, whereas stem plants, you're just buying like someone grabbed it, cut it, threw it in a pot. It'll root out in a few days. Don't worry about it. But on these things like Anubius and Java ferns and crypts and swords, all that, you're basically buying root structures. That's what you really care about. So, all right. Yes. Let's see here. Ooh, got an easy one next. The Marimo moss ball. So this is actually a Cladophora algae. So it's an intentional algae that we like that is in the shape of a ball. And we get varying sizes. I would say they would never be smaller than what's shown. We typically try to show smallest, and you were excited when you get larger. And water, fertilizer, they don't even need a whole lot. Like usually just fish bioload. They're great for betta tanks. They're great for African dwarf frog tanks. They're good for oxalotls. They're perfectly fine in all other types of tanks as well. They're actually, I love them in goldfish tanks because they kind of kick them around like they're a beach ball or something around the aquarium. So that's kind of entertainment for them. But in general, real easy to grow plant at $4, real affordable. And you can always get into like the super cool league, which I'm not in, but that is growing. The moss balls can get huge, and they might take 10, 12 years to get there, but you can get these as huge moss balls that everyone will go, wow, where did you get that? Or they'll know, whoa, you've dedicated the last decade of your life to making that thing. The tips I have, kind of rotate them. So if you don't have a goldfish kicking it around or something moving it in your aquarium, you need to move it every time you do water change, like every week or so, just because otherwise it's going to get flat spots. Like if light's coming down from the top, the bottom's never going to get any light. It'll die down there, and then you'll have this like brown flat spot. So keep rotating it, and eventually you'll have this nice big moss ball. So kind of an easy one. I should also mention that the rankings of these plants, they switch every day. So if someone comes in and buys like 30 Nobilis mats, then it's going to shoot to the top and be like, wow, a bunch of people. Like we sold 23 in the last 17 hours, it says. All right, so we're getting some mosses. Now, this is not a novice moss, but most mosses are pretty easy. Got a cool leaf texture. We only have one picture apparently, but we'll get some more eventually. And these come on a mesh mat. And so, how do I explain this? The best way to plant it, in my opinion, is either A, set it on gravel and just let it grow, or B, go ahead and wrap it around like a branch or a log or not a stick, but a rock, you know, and just like let that mesh grab on there, and eventually the moss itself will root onto that piece of wood or rock, and it's going to keep growing in all directions. You just trim it with scissors. It is a water column feeder. They're not huge feeders though, so a lot of times fish poop can handle it. But if you get your balance out of whack, you're going to grow a lot of hair algae on it. So it's great for shrimp. Great for just community tanks in general. It's kind of an aquascapers tool. That's why most people want it. You can use it in a breeding situation, but it's kind of one of the more expensive mosses. Maybe you'd choose a different one if it was just for fry cover. But it's got good resale value if you're breeding for profit, getting some mosses like that. Just make sure you don't mix them in with other things. And yeah, relatively easy, I think. You know, can't be super duper low light, but I would say like medium or more. Yeah, skill level medium. Do I have light requirements on there? I guess not. I guess maybe I should add lighting requirements, but lighting requirements are so abstract in terms of what size tank, how much light is it, you don't own a power meter, those types of things. So next we have Micro Sword. Micro Sword is one of the easier carpeting plants. It grows, it's kind of like a miniature version of Vallisneria. It only gets about 3 inches or so. Likes to feed out of the gravel. So if you have root tabs or you have an enhanced substrate, that's where dirt might help, or aqua soil or fluval stratum, any of that type of stuff would give you a little bit of a boost. Now, that being said, if your whole substrate is that, you're going to really want to plant it a lot, because if you just buy one pot, you're going to have way too many nutrients. You'll have an algae farm. So keep that in mind. This is also a plant that people typically buy in groups. It will come in immersed. Do I have any immersed growth on here? Let's see. A little bit. This one's mostly fully converted. But they're going to have a little bit wider blades. They're going to melt back and come in a little bit thinner. And so with this plant, I would take it out of the rock wool and pot, and I would split it up into in that plant, there's probably 30 plants in there, and a good set of tweezers and planting that out, you'll get a lot of growth a lot faster. This one's not too hard to keep rooted. So, all right, we'll hit Amazon Swords, and then we'll hop into chat. I can click on it. There we go. Amazon Swords. So these are definitely immerse grown. So these big wide leaves, that is not how an Amazon Sword looks underwater. Once it comes back in, it's going to have narrower leaves that are a little bit pointier. Apparently, we don't have a good picture of that because we don't have it on the website. But maybe the center of the plant, you can see here in the center of that plant, you've got these narrower leaves coming up. So typically these big leaves die back, and on the right-hand side of that picture, you can see kind of some brown spots. When a plant is growing out of water and you put it underwater, it starts consuming the leaves so that it's going to turn more and more brown. It's going to take that nitrogen back out of that leaf, and it's going to put it towards making new growth underwater. And so that's one way it gets nutrients. But what we want to do is we want to get it out of that pot and out of that rock wool and put it into gravel and load it up with root tabs. Once those roots start locking on to where all those nutrients are, you're going to get a lot of growth out of that. It sends out a spike. And so what that means is like a runner out into the water. It's going to have a bunch of baby plants that grow from it. And you can actually get it to flower up above the water if you really treat it well. Now, these get huge. They can get 3 feet big. They eat lots of root tabs. The first month they might eat 1. And then month 2, they're eating 3. And then month 5, they're eating 9. And then month 4, they eat your baby. Like, they just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. Get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Grow more and more and more and more baby plants. And so that's kind of the cycle. If you get a lot of translucent leaves, so clear leaves, or the bigger leaves dying back and then still new growth coming out of the center, that's a sign that it's not getting enough food. And so we need to feed it more. So it can be good for a goldfish tank in a pot. I wouldn't recommend it with plecos. So plecos typically like to eat on this plant. These big broad leaves, it goes, ooh, let me eat that. And so it's not great for that. But any community tank where you're not running Pogostemon, I would say almost any tank you're not running a Pogostemon does okay in. Usually it's the Pogostemon that kind of make it look like Swiss cheese and not grow very well. So, all right, let's take a look at the chat here, and we'll chime in on some questions. Everyone's enjoying the show. Well, that's good. But I wish that the mobile version would allow the same filter features as the website. I believe it does. Let me show you more. I have to see if I can get this website into developer mode, and then I can show you maybe. Let me see if I can do that on the fly, because that is the only thing I don't like about the website. We've made modifications. We've changed it a little bit. We're trying to make it more user intuitive for people on mobile, but apparently we're not doing a good enough job. So give me 1 second here, and let me see if I can pull this off on the fly. Yes. All right. So this is going to look weird. You're going to see a bunch of code on the screen. That's not my intention, but all right. Now this is a mobile version of the website. This is what it would look like if you're looking on your phone. In theory, we can go right to here. Let's see. Why is it not popping up? Maybe I've gotten rid of the sidebar. It could be one little option to check. So in theory, it should show up right here. Now I know the latest version from the developers has broken that aspect. So you can see here we've got this little toggle and we have options. That's purely how it's supposed to work. And the minute I'm done with this live stream, I'll be fixing that. So, but for everyone watching, know that if you're not watching this live, if you were to click right here, you would have all those filtering options. Well, let me check. Let me go back one more. Let me go back one more and make sure that live plants right here. We might be okay, right? Options. Yeah, okay, you can still sort. So it's just not inside because we're not at the right page. So yes, even on the mobile, you can go, oh, I just want to see all of the low light plants, and then you would close the mobile menu again, and you would have sorted to the low light plants. Same thing if we want to add red plants to that. And this works the entire way on the website, by the way. I believe you should be able to go to like fish foods and that kind of stuff. Let's see, click fish foods. I know because I had to program all this stuff in. And let's see here, go to options. Yep, we can choose vendor. We can choose, let's see, goldfish foods. And then we can choose like, oh, let's see all the Hikari goldfish foods. And you're left with one, but you can refine most things on the website by at least brand and then sometimes by types. And yeah, so yes, that other blank screen, I had something else there and I didn't like what it was. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do inside of a product when you click that options. Because like this one, for instance, there are no options. There's no options on that food. So I need to figure out something good to populate there, which I haven't figured out what to do. So yeah, let me figure out how to get back to a normal mode here. And we'll continue on. So yes, you should be able to do that. Hopefully, I haven't just been ignoring everyone, and you guys are able to recreate it as well. How do I get back to normal, get rid of. I'm just going to go there again. Jeez. Oh, I know what it is. My browser is all screwed up. All right, hopefully that'll do. Back to the chat. All right. I have a question. A bottom layer is equal complete, topped with sand, and then I'm putting in small leaf grass carpet over the top. How do you think this will work out in my invert tank? I think you've just kind of made it hard on yourself. The sand is, like, depending on the carpeting plant, the roots only might be that long. They might never even tap into the equal complete. So in general, sand is not optimal for growing plants. That's why at the beach you typically don't see plants there. Yeah, you could probably just gravel vac though. If you gravel vac, that'll bring the equal complete back on top and plant in that. So yeah. Oh, there was a 10-gallon tank question. Sorry, a 10-gallon plant tank for some pea puffers. What is the best way to get some circulation for plants in a 10-gallon? Put an air stone in there. Honestly, just use an air stone. It's like the best thing you can put in your aquarium. Yes. All right. Clown Loach toy in the background? Indeed, I do have lots. Can I talk about salt in plants? In general, salt in excess level kills plants. In minor levels, doesn't kill plants. We use salts all the time in our planted tanks. Like, magnesium is a salt, and yet we're going to use it, right? So a lot of the nutrients we're putting in are actually, we combine them with salt so we can have a delivery method. But NaCl, which is sodium chloride, in high levels raises salinity, and that salinity will kill off plants and algae. or at least you got to move it very slowly so they build a tolerance to it. I'm not super well versed in taking plants. What are they? It'd be from freshwater to what? Halophytic, I think is the term. Basically, that where they will, utilize some of that salt. But yeah. All right. Let's. Can I talk about how to get rid of algae? Algae is the result of an imbalance of nutrients and light. So when those two aren't in sync, so think of it like a human. If we're eating too much food and not exercising enough, we're going to gain weight, and that might be called algae, right? And if we exercise too much and we lose a bunch of weight, now we're getting too skinny, that's bad also. Same thing in a plant aquarium. If we're having way too much food or not enough food, we're going to have algae. If we have way too much light or not enough light, we're going to have algae. Bad things, right? If algae is bad, that's the result. Now, our goal in a plant tank is to get all those things in line. So if we have 8 hours of light and we put in 2 pumps of Easy Green into a 20-gallon tank every week, and we find out that we run out of Easy Green in 4 days, we have some options. We can either A, dose some more Easy Green, more food, right? And then we get to the end of the week. Or we could not dose more Easy Green and we could reduce light, right? So if we were running out of 4 days and now we have 60% as much light as we used to have, we might only use that fertilizer up in 7 days. So we can play with it. But when those aren't in sync is when algae is going to grow. So hopefully you've got lighting here, nutrients here. And as you eat the nutrients, everything is in parallel, right? And where we really run into problems is a lot of times people will go, okay, yeah, I figured it out. 6 hours of light and 2 pumps of Easy Green and my 20-gallon tank does awesome, right? And it lasts a whole week. Well, a month from today, all your plants are twice as big. It's not lasting a week anymore. You have twice as much biomass to feed with 2 pumps of Easy Green. So now it's only lasting 3 days again. So if you cut plants or your plants grow a lot, you need to adjust the fertilizer. And the lighting is usually constant. We put that on a timer. It's the same every day. So all we got to do is go, how much plants do I have? How many people are coming over for dinner? Oh, I better order 2 pizzas. Or, oh, it's just me tonight. Okay, maybe I'm just going to order some cheesy bread, right? You kind of adapt. And we need to do the same thing in our aquarium, but we forget about that because we just go, I don't want to screw it up. It's been going so good. It's been going so good, right? So that's why one of the tactics is to don't get in there and just like trim all your plants. Go, oh, today I'm going to trim Anubius. And then next week I'm going to trim this stem plant. And then next week I'm going to trim the carpet. And then next week I'm going to do this. So instead of just getting in there and whacking it all down, it'll be very easy for your fertilizer to kind of adapt as you're only like, oh, I'll take this part out, this part grows. Take that part out, this part grows. Oh, I took this part out, oh, that first part grew again. So it's a much more kind of doing this instead of just like, here it is, and whoosh, and then whoosh. So you want kind of even keeled, assuming we leave that light normal. And that's why we get such bad effects when we go on vacation. Someone left the light on the whole weekend, came back to a ton of algae. Oof, right? All right. Yeah, let's focus in on the website and see more stuff, I guess. Got some more live plants to talk about. I'm sure there's more. Christmas moss. All right, we can look at that one. Christmas moss gets its name because the little fronds, if you will, or the moss itself is. How do I get a good? Maybe on this side. I don't know, but basically the way it grows, it kind of swoops down like a pine tree with all these little parts coming out. So it looks like a Christmas tree. That's where it got the name Christmas tree or Christmas moss, right? So this is on mesh. You can attach it to wood, rock. You can just let it grow. You can use not twine, but like thread to wrap it around something. Once it grows in on that tree, which is typically what people use it for, is like manzanita wood or spider wood. It's going to branch out and look like that tree. It looks really good. And, at $10, it's a decent sample of it. You're getting, a square like this. And this is one that's usually sold out most of the time. And we can't buy unlimited amounts of it. So it's when we have it, buy it up. And so much so that like when AquaPros heard we had it, he's like, I got to buy it all. I've been looking for that for years. Because it comes and goes so quick. It's a very slow grower. Again, A little bit of fertilizer goes a long way. CO2 does help, but don't let a bunch of algae grow on it. That's what usually happens when people are really trying to cultivate that moss to grow a bunch of algae. All right. Next up, we've got Jave Fern Windelov, or jazz hands, as I like to call it. It's got all these little frondy fingers at the tip, right? So it's a Java fern just like other Java ferns. That's a good picture of it. And it's got all these jazz hands on it. It just looks cool and different. When you get it growing pretty dense on something, it looks cool. You're going to grow it on wood or rock, just like a lot of other things. Give it some easy green. Pretty easy to grow. Can grow under low light. You can kind of see even in the picture, we're not putting a ton of light on it. You know, it's got some, but not a ton. In this picture, obviously you can't because it was out of water. We took a picture in a photo booth. But in the actual aquariums, it can run under pretty low light, which is good. Keep with goldfish, adds a little bit of texture that's not like anything else in the aquarium. So sometimes you get all these green plants, you want it to look different, you got a certain look you're going for in that scape. This plant helps get you there. A little bit expensive at $9.99. I say a little bit expensive. That's only in relativity to other plants. Most plants that you will buy, you know, even if each plant was $50, the fact that you would have it and propagate it for many years to come is a bargain. So just know that it is a slow grower, but easy peasy. Next up, we got Java Fern on wood. Maybe you can't be bothered to put things on wood. Well, we have the solution for you, and that is we buy it where it's already on wood. This has a good example of that rhizome, though. You can see these kind of weird parts on the wood. That is the rhizome. The leaves come up off of that. Let's see if the other picture has any help. Yeah, again, we can see here the rhizomes attached to the wood and all the leaves going up. We have it in a community tank. You can see here with neon blue rainbows, dwarf neons. And this is good for a breeder also, or fish that dig. You can move this to like, oh, there's a new set of fry. Let me just move the piece of wood. Or you can have goldfish. You can move around. You can gravel vac underneath it. It can move, mobile, easy, drop it into water, walk away. We sell quite a few of them. And they are more expensive because we're shipping the piece of wood with it. So you get that with it. And a little bit of easy green. Boom. Done. Yeah. All right. What else we got? Staurogyne Repens. So this is a carpeting plant. This is more of like a medium light plant. And it kind of forms this like bush or hedge. So other ones stay really small typically. This one it's a stem plant. It'll kind of get bushy if you're not trimming it. And again, likes to be fertilized, some from the substrate, but this one will eat a little bit more of the water column fertilizer, so some easy green. Let's see if I can get some other pictures to help show. There's another picture. This is the immerse grown form. It'll look like this. This one is a little bit more submerged grown. Let's see the top version here. But more or less, it doesn't change a whole lot. And you'll get some of those leaves dying back. You'll get new ones coming in. The problem with this one, if you don't do anything, you just let it keep getting bigger and bigger, it'll shade out the bottom. You get all these leggy stems that look kind of gross and bad. So you just trim it, and it'll stay nice, short, and bushy. When you trim a stem plant, I haven't mentioned this before. When you trim a stem plant, how do I explain this? I guess I gotta use my own hands to explain this. When you trim a stem plant, if this is a stem, right, and I cut it right here, what's going to happen is not just a plant, it's not going to come where my finger was, right there. It is going to come out from the sides. And so every time you make a cut, you'll actually get, you know, like 2 plants growing out of it, or 2 stems. And so if you want to make something really bushy towards the bottom, keep cutting it, and it'll just keep forking out. So if we make this one cut, it goes into 2. And then we would make that cut, it would go into 4. So it actually just keeps expanding exponentially down to 1 stem, right? So it just keeps like going out and out and out. And you can make something really bushy and keep it short. And that's called training a plant. We can train plants. Basically, plants over time will also learn, hey, if I keep growing to the top, I keep dying. So I'm going to stop doing that. And you can do that with lilies and stuff like that. We'll probably see some dwarf aquarium lilies and that kind of stuff down the road here. So then we've got Cryptocoryne Lutea, one of my absolute favorite plants. Cryptocoryne Lutea grows about 6 inches tall. Easy plant. Give it some root tabs, walk away, enjoy. That's, you know, it's going to melt back like Crypts do. You can see some different pictures here. Nothing too standout-ish. But I really love that. You can see a lot of roots. Like again, when I was talking a little bit earlier, oh, you can't see any of this. I'm horrible at my job. Hold on. Let's go back here. Now we're looking at Cryptocoryne. My bad. But the bottom I was trying to point out here was all these roots. That's typically what you're buying when it comes to Cryptocoryne. Now, we've only sold 9 in the last 7 hours. They're not screaming off the shelf, but people should be buying all of our crypts, all of our swords. These are plants that are very easy, look really good. And, you know, so if they sit around for a little while, they get massive root systems. That is a huge bonus. If they're brand new to us, they'll have very small root systems. So that brings up a good point. I want to talk about how we handle plants. So it used to be when we charged much, much more for plants. So Vallisneria used to be like $12.99. Now it's $5.99, I think, right? Plants moved a lot slower. So on a given week, maybe we sold 75 of them, and we had plenty of space, and it worked out well. We could house them for weeks and weeks. Now, since we've lowered the pricing, we sell 300 or 400 a week, right? So that's like a lot more. Now, we don't have time. Like, we'd have to house like 1,000 of these to really give them a couple weeks underwater. So now, typically when you're buying from us, they'll be in water for somewhere between 3 to 7 days. Now, there will be things that, like, maybe those crypts, we buy a lot at a time. It could be in the water for a month, right? So sometimes you'll get a plant that's really small, and you're like, why is this thing so small? We've converted it 100%. Whereas when it comes in brand new to us, it might be really tall, right? But it hasn't converted yet. So you get this variance in there, which can cause people some grief, like, oh, they sold me a smaller plant or a bigger one or whatever. You know, realize that our best interest is to make you have a good experience. So we try to limit that as much as we can. That being said, you always want that good root structure, and if it's already converted, that's even better. But it used to be we could hold plants for at least a week or two and basically like fully convert them or almost fully convert before we sent out. Now, we only are able to partially convert and send them out. Prices got cheaper. The reality is you should be able to do it as well, and just want to be fully transparent. Like some things like moss balls and that kind of stuff, they're already grown underwater. Vallisneria is always grown underwater. You know, mosses for the most part are being grown underwater. There's a lot that are, and then there's some that aren't, like a sword plant, and we've just found it to be more beneficial if we just sell them cheaper to you guys, and we just make sure we get the process started really well. You know, the one thing we're not doing, and we'll never get to this level, I can promise you that. I would stop selling before I get to this level, but many of our competitors, the plants actually never even hit water. So they'll put on a big show on how they're putting them into water, but the reality is most places that have a deadline for plants, so you order plants and they ship out only 1 or 2 days a week, what's happening is they collect all the orders, they place the order with the farm, they get the plants, then they put those plants into the boxes to go out the same day. So they're not even seeing light, they're not getting rehydrated with fertilizers and all that kind of stuff, and that does make a big difference. If you know, some places are getting them shipped FedEx, and so it's 2 or 3 days in a box. Then they're putting it into another box, and they're shipping it to you for 2 to 4 days, right? So now it's like a week. The plant will still live. I'm not saying they're not going to live, but like with us, we only buy plants so they're overnighted or 1 day or less on an airport, and we get to do that because we're buying lots at a time. Today we picked up 29 boxes of plants, and then we soak them. Basically, is what we call it, soaking them. Which means they go into the tanks, fertilizers, CO2 injection, highlight, everything that a plant would love to grow with is sitting there going on. And from that point, if we have 500 Vallisneria in stock and 350 came in today, if you order right now, you'll be buying some of the stuff that was already in stock. And then probably in 3 or 4 days, we're going to hit to the new stuff, right? And so we will always send what we have is the best, so if something looks good, we're not going to send, or looks bad, we're not going to send it. If, there's not like, oh, I'll set these aside for myself. We always pull the best plant we have in stock each and every time. I should give the disclaimer that we don't get rid of snails and duckweed and that kind of stuff. In my opinion, it's impossible for most places to be duckweed and snail free outside of tissue culture. So we don't pretend that we are. That being said, we don't ship a ton. For the amount of plants we do ship, very few people get snails and duckweed and that kind of stuff and algae. But yeah, so that's my side rant on being truthful, what's actually going on, what we're actually doing, and that kind of stuff. So, someone asked, and we sent out a newsletter earlier today. If you're not signed up for the newsletter, you might want to be. I don't send them out that often because I'm busy, but we did order 100 new custom aquariums to further the plant storage. So I have them made out of acrylic. I think we spent roughly $22,000 on these tanks. Like, they're not cheap, but they're 24 inches wide, they're 30 inches front to back, and they're 1 foot tall. And they're going to be very, very, very efficient at storing plants and growing them quickly. It allows us to use less light because our tanks will be more shallow. It allows us to have 3 rows of plants instead of 2 if we like. There's a lot of perks to it. And, you know, just continually investing. Most places would never spend the money we're spending on plants. Like, we only run, well, I can't say only. 90% of the lights we run on our tanks are Fluval 2.0s because that's when we invested. Now some are 3.0s, and we still have a few lingering like Stingray lights that we had from other tanks. Oh, from the fish room. When I had the fish room, we just like, well, we're not going to throw them away. Let's use them. So we invest a lot. We run a lot of CO2 and that kind of stuff. And if you guys don't know, we do have Joel Corvus Oskin from the Corvus Oskin channel. He, I guess, officially would be the person in charge. My voice is going. Hold on. He would be the person in charge of maintaining water parameters and overall maintenance on the system. That being said, we do use auto dosers and you know, controllable pumps and all that kind of stuff. So we're automating most of it, but there is someone physically checking in on, are they testing out correctly? Are we having any algae problems? Do we need to change UV sterilizer bulbs? Are the CO2 tanks full? Are they, you know, the diffusers working correctly? Which we don't use diffusers anymore. We use reactors. But yeah, so we're dedicating, you know, staff and time and resources to do this as best as possible and also keep prices down. And, you know, I would say read our reviews. Like, we typically have a lot. And so with reviews, I would only ever get rid of a review if A, you leave 5 of, like, well, not 5, but 2 of the same review. So if you say Corey sucks twice, I delete 1 of them. If you have any kind of swearing or just stuff that couldn't be shown, I would delete that. Otherwise, yes, we definitely leave bad reviews, and it's because I believe that bad reviews sell pretty much just as well as good reviews. As long as you have more good reviews than bad reviews, it legitimizes the reviews. So, like, the next plant up would be Anubius barteri. And if we go down towards the bottom, we have reviews down here, and these are all people that leave their own pictures. Like, you know, we don't fabricate these or anything, so you can see, you know, actually what people's tanks are looking like. So you can see this guy's got 4 billion snails, a guy or girl, I don't know who it is. And you can see they're watching TV here, but it's not me. What? No, but you see they've got hornwort in the tank, and they've got some Anubiuses, they've got a ton of guppies, and they've got some choya wood and some dragonstone, and, you know, that's their tank. And so, you know, you feel pretty confident, like, that's probably someone's actual tank. And same with this one. They attached it to this piece of wood, you know. But we do get bad reviews. Like, so we've got on this one 25 5-star reviews and 1 2-star review. What do they say? My first order from the co-op, I couldn't believe how big and healthy the plants are. The box came in, was packed exactly as you would want. They couldn't have done a better job. We'll order more. Thanks, Corey and his team. So that's a 2-star review. You know, my guess is he might have clicked the wrong thing, or, you know, I can't say specifically, but, you know, we leave that. That's a bad example, though, because now it seems like I set that review up. Let me find a different bad review where it makes us look bad, because that looks too fabricated. Let's see here. Let's click on the next plant. Where were we? We were at Anubius barteri. Let's go to Dwarf Chainsword. Maybe we do horrible at Dwarf Chainswords. No, only 5-star reviews. Okay, there's got to be something we're bad at. Majority, though, like, we do maintain a 4.9 rating, so we don't get that many bad reviews, but I would think it's got to be Anubius, because every once in a while Anubius gets Anubius rot. Even on here, so we got some 3-star reviews. Maybe some of them don't like us. Well, I shouldn't say don't like us. Maybe they don't like the plant, or yeah, so this person, Michael, says, it came in okay, but fell apart within a week. The other kinds I've ordered have all done well. Just this species did not work out well for me. So that's one of those things that, like, maybe specifically they got a bad plant, maybe That one didn't like their water. I'm not really sure. But we are not perfect. You know, another one says, it was very beautiful, but I killed it. It died on me. It was one of my first plants. Maybe you'll have better luck, right? So, you know, these aren't horribly inflammatory towards us or anything like that, but I do want you guys to know that we take reviews very serious. We try to correct any problems, and our goal is hopefully that you just leave us 5-star reviews because we've done enough pre-work to get to the point where you just have a good experience from the get-go. That's our goal. Not that it happens every time, because sometimes they gotta sit in Texas and cook for 4 days because the USPS loses them, or you know, like they get, you know, elbow dropped by your neighbor. Like there's all stuff we can't control, but for the most part, we try everything we can control. We're doing everything we can to possibly minimize transit issues or our own stockage issues or being out of stock, all that kind of stuff. So let's take a quick look at the chat. This just in. All right. Just remembered a question I've had for a while. Is there, if there's no aquarium clubs in my area, how does one become an aquatic horticulturist? That's going to be difficult. You might be able to do it through like the AGA, the Aquatic Gardeners Association. Some clubs will let you join remotely. Ours won't. Like the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society won't let you do that. When it comes to breeding fish, you can become a master breeder through like the CARES program and some of the other clubs, but without, I don't know. So if your club, if you're listening right now and you have a remote program, speak up and we can connect you guys with each other and you can collect some dues, they can get certification, and you know, really all it is basically just proving to someone that's governing that you've propagated an insane amount of plants and you kind of know what you're doing. You know, you can become a master horticulturist or a master breeder or whatever you're going to do. Or you've like, I've kept this CARES species going for 12 years. But yeah, if you don't have a local club, it makes it more difficult for sure. I'm not going to deny that, but there's probably got to be at least one out there. If there's not, if you're listening, yes, do that. You'll get more members. So, all right. Your plants look better than my local store, and it came through the mail. Only ordering co-op plants from now on. Our plants are fairly fresh, and you know what I do hope in the near future, like in the next 5 years, I would love it if every store would actually use good lighting and CO2 and fertilizers on their planted tanks, so that, you know, I'm against bunch plants. I'm against kind of the buy and die methodology in aquariums or stores. You know, the fact is, an Anubius, if you buy one, or an Amazon store and you buy one and you do nothing to it, it's probably still technically alive 7-10 days later, but 14-18 days later it's dying, and then you've got an unsuspecting victim that buys it, and if they don't know what they're doing, they don't have much time to figure it out. But if they start with a really good plant and you still don't know what you're doing, at least now you've got those, you know, 10, 14, 18 days to figure it out. Ask on the internet, ask on Facebook, ask on Reddit, what's going wrong? Instead of like, another 2 days, they're all gonna die. So that's all we try and do. Like, we can't solve if someone doesn't know how to keep it alive, but we can, you know, hedge our bets to go, well, we've given them the best possible chance. Yeah. Bought 4 valves for you. Didn't realize how different Italian was from Americana. Can you further go into detail on the differences and why you don't offer Americana on the site? Well, so Americana, I believe. Let me Google. Let me do some Googling here and see if I'm right. Is it Jungle Val? Is Americana? Because there's like, I want to say like 16 different vowels. How do I get to something that's reasonably scientific? Like, where's a Wikipedia or something? Oh, yes. Yeah, so Jungle Val is Vallisneria Americana gigantea, which is basically Americana. So the big difference is Italian Val that we sell, a little bit narrower leaf, right? And gets about 4 feet. Whereas Americana is like 1.5 inches wide and grows 8 feet long. Now, in some of your aquariums, maybe you need 8 feet long val. 99% of people need 4 foot. And the reality is, we really need about 2 foot, but there's not really a good one that's easy to grow and only stays 2 feet. You know, when you start getting into, what is it, like Vallisneria nana, it really is just dwarf Sagittaria. At that point, just buy dwarf Sagittaria. But that's the main difference, and so people always get weird when the tag says Italian Val, but when you Google Italian Val, mostly that's corkscrew Val. Like most farms, and these are people with lots of different Val, don't even know what they have. They're like, we had it looked at once. We were told it's this, so that's what we saw it as, right? And so it makes it hard on everyone when there's no common standards. So, yeah. Okie doke. Let's jump into some more plants here. Let's find some other stuff. Maybe some Buse. That's a good one. Bucephalandra. So what might be different about our Buse and other people's Buse? So first, it's a plant that's like Anubius, grows on a rhizome. Kind of like Anubius and Petite, I would say. You can actually flower this one underwater, just like Anubius, which is nice. And here it's got some little white flowers. We actually don't like it to flower when we're growing it in the warehouse because growing a flower uses up a lot of energy, and that might be 3 or 4 leaves instead. We'd rather sell you a bushier plant than one that's got a flower on it that when it lands in your tank, you don't have great parameters, that flower is going to die anyway. We have a horrible selection of Bucephalandra. Why, Corey? Why don't you carry all the Bucephalandras? Because almost uniformly, everyone else is selling wild-caught Bucephalandra. Now, you might be thinking, I didn't know plants could be wild-caught. Yes, they can. Like, all plants originate from somewhere in nature. This is a very slow-growing plant. This is a very expensive plant. And when you have things that are hard to make and are worth lots of money, you start getting things that, maybe aren't so good. And so a lot of companies will get lots of different Buces, and they will import them and they will sell them, and they're coming straight out of the environment. Now, so much so, and this isn't me, I don't want this to be like, oh, Corey said, I will use the Aquatic Gardeners Association as an example. They have banned the sale of all Bucephalandras in the club and all that because so many of them are being taken from the wild, and it is that detrimental. So much so that only tissue culture Bucephalandras could be sold at the big auction last weekend. Anything outside of that, because they couldn't guarantee it wasn't taken from the wild, wasn't allowed to be sold. Now, we personally also like to practice sustainability, whether it's using less plastics, whether it's not taking stuff out of the wild in a sustainable way, where like Cardinal Tetra is sustainable, right? Where this plant, probably not currently, but maybe next year it will be. So we buy it all farm raised, and that's why it's already on the wood, right? Or we can buy it in a pot, but typically people just want to buy it on the wood. And yeah, we have to sell it for $26 when you can get other little sprigs of it for $12, right? And some rarer types. But we aren't willing to make our money on things that we don't believe in. So, if somehow we found out that all of this was being brought in from the wild, which to all of my research is not true, then we would stop carrying it. So we just, prefer to, how do I say this as politely as possible? We prefer not to partake in the destruction of the hobby we love as much as possible. Now, obviously I have to put fish in a plastic bag, and that plastic will kill the environment. So we will encourage everyone to recycle, reuse, reduce as much as possible. But given a choice, I will opt for, less impact. And this is just one of those industries that's like, wow, we really know this is going bad right now. Same reason we can't really get African Fernal Bulbitis. It's just being taken out from Africa out of the wild and not being done sustainably. And sustainability really just means that we're not harvesting more than nature's naturally replenishing. In 5 years, if all of a sudden a river doesn't have any more of a plant, that's not like what it was 5 years before. So we need to make sure that we're doing these things so that not just for profit, but also sustainability. If we want to take something out, let's be responsible about it. And the more people have these in aquariums, the more people are going to grow it. It does grow slow, but we can all share. So being that it's Anubius, rhizome plant, easy green, does it well, slow grower, not too much light, pretty easy to grow, and you can flower it even under low light. So not bad at all. I'm sure that stirred up some controversy, so let's hop back into the chat and see what people are saying. Thank you for striving and most always taking the high road. I try to. I want to be very clear that I'm not sure we can always take the high road. And what I mean by that, it's not like I know that I'm doing something horrible, but I believe every business could be as ethically responsible as they could possibly be, but someone else in the chain could be being unethical, and then all of a sudden you find like, oh geez, I got caught up in that scandal, right? So, to the best of my knowledge, we're way above board, right? But I don't want to pretend like, oh, we're better than everyone or anything like that. I'm sure somewhere down the road we don't know that something's going on, but if we get wind, we will obviously take that into consideration. Be like, oh, do we have to drop that product, or could we source it from somewhere else, or could we do a different thing? You know, it just yeah. All right. I recently had some of my older and larger Anubius plants have leaves that are rotting from the stem out to the leaf. Any idea what to do? So from the stem, the rhizome, to the bigger leaf. So turning yellow there. That could be Anubius rot if it's getting any of that gelatinous stuff growing on it. But in general, when I see, well, let's see, rotting, I assume it's turning yellow because that's what Anubius does. Usually that's a lack of nitrogen. So I would try adding some more nitrogen, which Easy Green would do. Let me take a look. I know I've neglected all the super chats thus far, and I want to address some of those. So if I can find the right page. 86, it is 86 in here. Whew. You can see my face getting red. All right. Edward Fisher says, good plants that you sell for a newbie. I've got a 15-gallon flex with a betta, some cories, some rasboras. I use Fluval Spectrum soil and have Easy Green on standby. Yes. So what I would do is hop to the website, and we're going to hit the back button here. For the most part on the website, if you click low light plants, that automatically means easy. Now I'm going to go a step further in that the plants I've chosen, of like the 60 species we sell, I would rate 55 out of 60 of them to be easy. Basically the ones that aren't highlight. So if we go back to our sorting again and I click highlight, yeah, so there's basically about 3 that aren't easy. Scarlet Temple's not hard, just needs a lot of light. Staurogyne Repens, not hard, just kind of needs a lot of light. And Monte Carlo. But there should be, oh, I bet you Dwarf Baby Tears, I don't have the right tag on it, so it's not showing up. I'll fix that later tonight. Because Dwarf Baby Tears, I consider is a difficult plant, and that didn't show up. So, missing the tag on that one, I bet. So that way when you hit that button, it'll show up for you. But for the most part, all of these plants should be attainable by everyone watching to grow. Like, we're not, I don't even nerd out that hard, but we're not dealing in like Areos, we're not dealing in, you know, white form of Ranekii minis, tissue culture plants. Like, we are considering maybe bringing in some tissue culture plants, but I really need to up the level of education there so that most people will be successful. As long as like 9 out of 10 people are successful in what we're trying to sell someone, that's a win. But anything less than that, I think it's an educational problem. And so, yeah. Like, we were having that problem with CO2 regulators. Not 9 out of 10 people were having instant success. I would say like 5 out of 10. And then you had 5 out of 10 people that would order it and be like, so how do I set it up? What do I do? I have questions. And so that told me we're failing our pre-selling education. And so we have to build that program out before we're going to bring CO2 regulators back, because that ends up being a ton of emails. And it's way harder to explain, like, well, what problem are you having? Have you tried this? What about this? Can you take a picture? Can you take a video? Or we start the whole thing of like, oh, Corey did like 3 or 4 videos. Here's all these articles written. And you kind of get your way through that before you ever order it. And then if you run into a problem, oh, yes, now I know what this thing's called. It seems like the needle valve isn't as a fine adjustment as I was thinking. Does this seem normal? Right? Like, at least then you know what the parts are called, and we can kind of troubleshoot from there instead of like, I plug it in and I don't think it's working. You know, like, that's where it starts, and it becomes this thing where we spend an hour troubleshooting to a point like, yes, it was working fine, we just didn't know how to use it yet. Now we know how to use it, and forever on you'll know how to use it, which is great. But we need to build it so that an hour of employee time and all that stuff going in back and forth to all these emails, we start losing a lot of money on that transaction. And it's not all about money, but at the end of the day, we do need to, turn a profit. So another great plant, this is one that everyone should be buying, is Water Sprite. And we were sold out, so we didn't sell that many in the last, 7 hours or whatever. But Water Sprite, this is a plant that grows in several different ways. If you grow it like it is, it will look like this little spindly plant that's kind of cool. When it gets bigger, it's a stem plant. If you float it though, the leaves get super wide and are awesome, and it grows these really big roots, great for breeding fish. My favorite way. We only sell the lace leaf variety. So what that means is it's the one that can grow in the floating mode, or some of the other ones, they never get that floating mode. We only buy that one, and we find it's easier to grow. Offer it some easy green. It'll come in looking a little weak. That's just because this plant doesn't ship that well, but it's my favorite plant for breeding fish. I've had fish rooms that run on this, and if you just take it out of the pot and you just let it float, it will just look worse and worse and worse. And then pretty soon you go, wait a second, it's getting these big old leaves. You can technically take a tiny piece and throw it into an aquarium, and it will start the whole new plant. That's what makes this plant amazing. So I highly, 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 highly recommend it, especially if you're breeding fish. It looks okay as a planted plant, but I love it as a floating plant. One of my absolute favorites, but do know that it is very fragile, and it's going to take a beating on the way there, but it is so worth it. So, even if you get the sad looking plant at the end, just float it and it'll do well. Ooh, 153 reviews. Someone has to hate us on this. Yeah, we got 12 people that give us a 3. Came with leaves browning and spots all over, not as full as I would have hoped. Again, I kind of explained that's a plant that's, weak in shipping. Came in with some brown and black spotted leaves. Leaves are falling off after a couple weeks. Jave from Windelov's doing fine. Completely melted within the first couple weeks. Only had one tiny plant floating in my tank. Banana plant still doing well. Again, kind of like these are people that, we need to do more little education, which I'm doing right now, and set people's expectations. Like, this is going to melt back pretty hard. And the floating version is the one you really want, but yes, you could grow it planted. I bought 3 and none survived in any of my tanks, but my Vallisneria, Bacopa, and Pearlweed and Cryptocoryne Lutea are doing great. Yep. So, yeah, just know that. Obviously, there's like 100. So, if we're looking at that, 90% give it 5-star, 1% 4-star, and 8% 3-star. And we got a couple 1% or 2 and 1-star reviews. But for the most part, again, 9 out of 10 people are doing well with it. And what I like to think about that is, if 9 out of 10 people, think you're making pizzas or hamburgers, if 9 out of 10 people that come through that door go, wow, this is great, exactly, good dinner, I feel like I'm doing pretty good. Because I don't know that, no matter what kind of pizza you like, oh, I like New York style, I like Chicago style, I like Little Caesars, I like Domino's, I like it's really hard to please people. So if you can do it, 9 out of 10 people are going, oh yes, I like this product, then I feel like we're doing pretty good. Now, if most of it was like a 3, like 50% of people are like, yeah, it was all right. And, or 50% of people said good and 50% of people said bad. I feel like we need to tweak what we're doing to get that better. So I know that no matter what we do, we'll never be able to get to 100%. As hard as we try, there's always going to be that last 10%. It's like, dang it, that's the hardest 10%. So we go and launch other products instead. All right. Let's see if we have any other plants that are... Ooh, I do like this plant. So we'll look at this one. I love the Nana Petite in a bowl. You get a ton of Anubius Nana Petite in this bowl for this price. So it's, about 2.5 times our pot, but you get I feel like it's 4 or 5 times as much as Anubius, and it's already in a nice clay pot that sinks. Great for goldfish tanks, great for shrimp tanks, great for, just kind of like if you have like a Buddha and that kind of stuff in your tank, like that kind of Zen look. I really like it. We don't typically have any break in shipping, even though it's a clay pot or a terracotta pot, and I really like that one. So that's just my own. I really like these. I should do more. in my own tanks, but I haven't been setting anything up in my own tanks for a while. But that's going to change. So, all right. Anything else that we want to? I want to get some highlights because we got about 30 minutes left, and I want to tackle any general questions you guys have. I should probably talk about lotuses and red melon swords. I do like that too. Okay, fine. You talked me into it. Red melon swords. These are a plant that, look pretty terrible. See this red melon sword? Oh man, I wouldn't buy that. But you might buy this. Like, wait a second, that's got really nice reds, right? So it's like, this is how we buy it, this green thing, right? And then it'll be halfway between green and red by the time we send it to you. And it's going to be a really nice red plant when you keep it in your aquarium. Feed it, like a Santa-sized sack full of root tabs, and, it's going to treat you right. So, a lot of root tabs. Don't keep with plecos. It'll grow really well. Easy peasy plant, medium light or more. And then I want to talk about, I guess I should talk about Scarlet Temple. We sell a lot of it. This is all immerse grown. You can see it's even got flowers on it, and the leaves look a little bit weird. So when you get it, like the top inch or two is going to be what we grew. Everything else can be with the whole, not the whole, the farm grew. So you're going to get a lot of melting going on. You're going to get these long stems. What you're going to do eventually is cut it and replant it, and that's going to root out. Then you're going to have this gorgeous plant. But know that at $7, you're essentially buying the starts to this plant. From then ever on, you can just cut it and plant it, cut it and plant it, cut it and plant it. And it looks amazing when it's grown in. I hesitate to put the picture here that shows how good it looks, because then everyone's going to assume that's what we're selling you. And we're not. We're selling you this. To sell that other plant, all of a sudden it's got to be like $20. So we're selling you basically the beginnings of what's really going to grow good. You can see here on the picture it's got a little bit of roots and that kind of stuff. But typically what they're doing at a farm, they're growing it up out of water. They go and they cut it, they jam it in the rock wool. They put it not underwater, but they put the pot in water for like a week or two, let those roots start growing, then they ship it to us. From there, we'll have it for anywhere from 1 to 10 days, and we'll be growing as fast as humanly possible, and then we'll ship it to you, depending on stock levels. All right, any other crazy different plants besides the lotus? I guess we better talk about that next. Like a dwarf aquarium lily or lotus. Are we sold out of all of them? We got a tiger lotus right here. So the tiger lotus. This is one you can train. You get a bulb typically. We sell ours with the bulb. Most of the companies don't, because the bulb is the expensive part. But the plant can be detached from it. So you can take the plant off, you can bury it, you can make this grow more plants. But you're going to get all these lilies that go to the surface of the water. If you keep trimming the ones that go to the top of the water, it'll keep making smaller lilies, and you can get a much bushier plant. This is a very heavy root feeder. The bulb itself is a lot of nutrients. So if you split it off, you definitely need either enriched substrate or root tabs. Or if it stays with the bulb, you need to make sure that when it grows the roots, those roots are feeding enough to replenish the bulb. Otherwise, you're going to get this mushy bulb. It'll die after a while because you never fed it. That being said, you might get a few months out of it because we've fed it quite well before you got it. Yeah. So the bulb is nutrient storage is what it is. And if you're doing your job right, you'll never deplete that, which is a good thing. Same with banana plants and all the Apontigitans here. We've got, Madagascar lace came back in. So we're sold out of like Madagascar lace and Apontigitan bovinianus and alvaceus here because a typhoon hit the region where they're being grown. And so it's been very, very difficult. And they said around June. So these are coming, the Madagascar lace are coming in a bit early. But same again, bulb plant. What's good about these, they have this, they get the lace plant from the leaves. They got all those holes. That's how it's supposed to be, right? Kind of a cool plant, pretty easy to grow. Needs a little bit more light because it's got all those little holes in the leaves, so it can't catch as much. Think of it like, you got a bowl and you're trying to catch a bunch of water, the photons, but you got a bunch of holes in it, it kind of goes through, right? So you can't catch as much. So think of it like a bowl with a leak. Oh, I need a lot more light. Not a lot, but more. But a great plant. So hopefully you guys can get enough info from the descriptions we've written. We've done a bunch of pre-selecting for you to make it as easy as possible. It kind of boils down to if you use root tabs and you use Easy Green and you use a Fluval 3.0, if you do those things, it's nearly impossible to not grow a bunch of these plants. Like you pair all those things up, and I get it. That is straight up like, depending on tank size, but like on a 4-foot tank, that's $200 in equipment. You got a $185 light, $15 bottle of Easy Green, $10 bottle of root tabs, or not bottle, but package of root tabs, and then you got to buy plants. But when you have that groundwork laid, you pretty much will be successful for the most part. Like you could just really be bad, but no, if you at least know you have all the tools to be successful, at least if I have all the ingredients to make a pizza, I'm much more likely to make one that I'd want to eat versus not knowing anything about making pizza dough or pizza sauce, or I used the wrong kind of cheese, and you used, like you didn't season the ground beef before you put it on there. Not that a lot of people have ground beef on pizza, but if you were going to, you'd want to season it first. You might be putting hot dogs on there. I want to make a video about that. Hot dog pizza. So, all right, let's jump into that super chats. I know I neglected you guys forever and a day. I apologize, but that's the best way I figured how I could do, kind of an overview of plants. Like we didn't hit all 60, but that's what descriptions are for. So, all right, we got a bunch of new members. Let's see here. Jeffrey Sullivan, Paul Jones, Miyagi 570, Dave Yang, Pipe Dream Pythons, Easy Aquatics, Dr. Jade, and Lone Wolf. Thank you very much. If you become a member, you get a cool little icon. Your name turns green. You get access to extra emojis like the hamster and angry goldfish bowl. Well, it's maybe not a goldfish bowl, but just fish bowl. And you don't have slow mode, and you get access to behind the scenes content, which isn't crazy. Like I don't hold a lot back from you guys. We get a few extra pictures and things here and there. And sometimes when I find these plushies for sale, when they put a few back in the stock, usually I release it to the members first, and then from there you can go get it. Anything that I'm not depriving you guys of anything. I would just purely be maybe giving you a heads up first. Megan Ness says, when is the best time to trim to help your plants convert? In my opinion, if you're trying to convert plants, don't trim at all. Let them use up as much nutrients as they can. So I personally don't trim at all, no matter how bad it looks, until that plant is like fully converted. Yeah, so anything you cut off, you're just taking away nutrients. Ginger Graves, listening at 35,000 feet, heading home from the AGA. Wow. I want to know what airline will let this much go through on the plane. I only get so I can do like a little bit of text messaging. Man. So yes, we got to meet Ginger Graves in person at the AGA. She got to meet Murphy, Jimmy, co-op staff. Murphy's even better in person. Yes, indeed. He's getting huge. But it was nice. It's always nice to meet people that we interact with a lot online. Even if we don't interact with you a lot, it's still nice to meet you. But it's cool to see like, oh man, I've been talking to you for like a year and a half. Oh, you're that person. So it's always fun for that moment of like, oh, okay. Just place an order. I think we should all order, or we should order all the plants. Yes, Matthew, please do. Buy all of the plants. That's what we bring them in for, and that's what keeps my employees employed. So yes, order more. Order now. Order often. Order them all. Let's see. Have you guys ordered any? You've ordered some. Yes. While I'm thinking about it, I will be in Israel this weekend on. So next week, if you're in Israel, look in some of the Israel Facebook groups. Dennerley Israel should have something posted. On my own Facebook page, we've got an event. It has been confirmed. We're supposed to go and see the farm that invented the Black Knight Ram or the Dark Knight Ram. There's some guppy farms we're going to go to. I don't know all the other things. I know there's a couple stores. I'm going to give at least 2 talks, I think on a Thursday night and a Friday night, I think. Don't hold me to that. The Shrimp King's also giving a talk, so we're doing that. My goal is to film as much cool fish stuff as I can and get back to you guys without getting too political. Do realize I appreciate you guys all, and I'm just there for the fish. Yes, I am aware that Israel is kind of a war zone at the moment. They've reached a treaty again, but in this week they did launch, or at least rockets were exchanged, 250 of them. So we'll hope that none of that goes on. I'm assured that we should be in a space where that won't be going on. That being said, anything could happen. And but I am willing to go through some risk to bring you guys this super cool content, and so I will be. Yes. All right, back to the super chats. I wanted to remember to say that though, so that way I'm not like, dang it, I never told people in Israel that I'm going. Received an order of moss balls, Cryptocoryne Wendetii, spiderwood, Fissidens, fontanus, marble queen swords, Bacopa lineana today. They all look great. Thanks, Corey. Well, thank you. I'm always glad to hear feedback. Yeah, we're really enjoying lately. The employees are really sharing, like, oh, we got more good feedback, because so often the emails and stuff will come in like for every 50, hey, there was something wrong with my order, or you know, how do I fix my cat from eating my fish? There's like one that's like, oh, I just wanted to know, it's awesome. Oh, thank you. So, yeah. Tips to grow Susswassertang as fast as possible. Dave, turn off the light. The fastest I ever grew it was in an aquarium where the light bulb burned out, and I didn't replace it for like 9 months. When I turned the light back on, I realized I now had, so it was a 55-gallon hex, and I realized half the aquarium was filled with Susswassertang. So it does really well without light. In my experience, that's the way I would propagate it if I was looking to crank out a ton. I tested it again in a few other tanks. Super duper duper low light is the way to go, in my experience. So, all right, let's get back to the normal chats. Don't forget to hit that like button, by the way, if you like it. All right. Candy says, so true, my darkest aquarium has the best Susswassertang. Yes. Yep. That is what it does. Pogostemon Helferi. So you probably want to know about that. I see you shouting for it. Pogostemon Helferi is also known as, what is it? Pogostemon Downeye? Downeye crown plant? I can't think of the other common name. I only know Pogostemon Helferi off the top of my head. But it's this little crown-like plant that was all the rage about 8 years ago. Now, why it's not all the rage right now is because what we learned is an African plant, and it wants much harder water than typically what we're keeping in our highly aquascape tanks where we're injecting CO2 and nutrients and all that. But not too hard. It does grow as a stem plant. It will kind of get leggy if, like my wife of all people, I was struggling to grow it, and my wife of all people grew it in a betta tank in a 5-gallon in the kitchen with total neglect. And, you know, so it can be grown even under low light. It was just an under cabinet light that was stuck to the underneath of a cabinet in an old duplex we rented 2 houses ago. And she bought it at an auction, and I go, there's no way you'll ever grow that because she's not that good with plants. And yet, boy, did she prove me wrong, and I was ultra jealous, and that's how I knew it would grow as a stem plant, because when you grow it in high light, the stems are very compact, and so it just like looks like it has a bunch of stuff coming out really close together. Kind of like Blixa, also a stem plant. Doesn't look like one, but it is. But under really low light, it really stretches each little rung to get to that light, and so that's where you learn about that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I can get it in. The problem is our water is terrible for it, so I really would have to set up another system, and then you guys would really have to know that it really wants hard water and good lighting and CO2 injection, and that typically is just not what we provide as hobbyists. Not that we couldn't, it's just not the common wisdom currently. So, Ryan Music, another $5 for all that you do. Your knowledge is invaluable. Well, thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. You know, as always, I recommend if you're going to donate $5, become a member, get a few more kickbacks and perks if you can, or you're always welcome to spend that money on the website and get yourself something to show for it. You know. Delta Airlines for $35 fee. Great meeting you and Dorky as well. Well, I fly Delta. All right. Last time, maybe it was not all flights have the same Wi-Fi capabilities, and so normally what I can do is I have the ability when I'm on Delta is I can chat. So some of you guys will see me in other people's live streams, and I'll be chatting, but I can't get any of the audio or visual. So yeah, I'll try it again though. Well, $35. I'm too cheap. I'm too cheap. That's my problem. I'm really cheap. Oh yes. I remember not everyone, let me back that up. That would be a lie. I remember a few people mentioning this hat. Can you buy this hat? No amount of money can buy this hat. I bought them because I wanted a hat for my employees that would be a lighter fit for the summer. And so this is kind of a meshed flex fit hat thing. And it turns out they cost $1 billion. And apparently they take 3 months to produce, because I ordered them 3 months ago and they finally showed up yesterday. And they're much bigger. So this large, extra large is like big for me, and I have world's biggest head, 7 3/4. You walk into a hat store, not many hats to choose from. So I have a few other employees with large heads like myself. That'll be fine. I instantly need to reorder this small to medium flex fit size so they can have these mesh fit hats as well. I may or may not, I say may or may not, do some kind of giveaway to give a few of these out. So if you have a giant noggin like myself, you could find yourself sporting one of these. But I want to say my cost on them is like $27. And what that means is you're probably not going to buy one for 40 or 50 bucks, so I will probably never sell them. That sucks. But I do like this fit, and I'm like, ooh, who else could make these hats? Because it is. So even though I'm on fire, hold on. I love these performance polos. Oh, nope, it got me. So even though I'm sweating, my head is not. That's a sales pitch for this hat, I'll tell you what. All right. Pro Fit, I got 5 on it. Yes. Yeah, I know. Everyone wants the hats. We gave a bunch of hats away at the AGA. So that's why we're like sold out of some sizes right now. But we get more in, and you know, it's all about that swag, right? I gotta get more hats. Oh no. Corvus says karate chops. I know, I instantly thought Corvus wears the small to medium size hat, and I'm like, oof. He's not gonna make this easy on me. Maybe we'll do a few extra hats and people can buy them, but you know, there's things I don't like the fact that in the demo I didn't notice this, but these stitches are totally seen. So focus not on my head. There you go. See how it goes in the center of the Aquarium Coop logo? So it's not like 100%, you know, 100% perfect, but see, here's the problem is the internet as a whole, some of you are willing to pay that $40, $41, right? And some of you say, I'm willing to pay $30. If I pay 27 bucks for the hat and I ship it to you, I literally am losing money. So by the time you pay with a credit card and I ship it to you, it's like I'll have paid you $5 for the hat. And I'm not saying I wouldn't pay someone $5 to wear a hat, but if I do that too many times, I go out of business. So really, I need to spend time going, okay, who out there can make me this hat that doesn't cost $27? Because originally I was just doing a few for the crew and I wanted it to be quick. Well, that was not quick at 3 months. So, you know, there's that limitation also. Yeah. Sell them as a collector's item at $100 a pop. That will backfire. Like, out of 300,000 people, 1,000 will be like, look at Corey, he's totally, what do you call that? Like taking advantage of people. It's like, no, you don't have to buy it. Like, this is one of those items that like I'd rather buy 10 and give them away than just have people hate on me because I have to sell it for too much. So, yeah. Alrighty. Ooh, new member, John Smith. Welcome to the team. Each member, we get closer and closer to me owning Google. I believe it's only another 8.6 million members, and we get 1 share in Google. So we're getting close. All right. It is hot today. That's what I know. Any liquid fertilizers for a 5-gallon full of Cryptocoryne? Wait. Yeah, are liquid fertilizers for 5-gallon full of Cryptocoryne? You just want to use root tabs mostly. You could use Easy Green and use a pipette to put a little bit in there, but yes. All right, we got 10 minutes. Where's the lightning round? I have hard water and CO2. Bring on the Hellfire. Yes, Candy. Candy Overhauls, you would do well with Pogostemon Hellfire, for sure. Like, that's what it wants. Fine polypads. When will they be back in stock? I believe our cargo container with them is on the water. So, what does that mean? That probably means somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks or less. You know, China was on holiday a couple of times. All I know is we have a lot of them on the way, and our goal will be to not run out again. So here's what happened, right? I had like 1,000 of those white pads in stock for like 2 years, and no one was buying them, right? Nobody. I redo the website and I lower the price by $1, and we ran through 1,000 of them in like 40 days. Thus, our inventory was not forecasted correctly of like, oh no, we need more of these things. And so now we're sitting sold out, unfortunately. That being said, I do have a secret reserve for the 800-gallon tank. They're mine, all mine. But yes, so they will be coming back in. Yes, they are great quality. Yes, they are cheap. We will try to avoid that in the future. Won't give myself the 1-2 punch of lowering the price and making the website bigger, better, faster, cooler, all those things. And yes, we definitely are making lots of steps lately to our number one goal right now. So for the longest time, number one goal was customer satisfaction and answer emails as fast as humanly possible. Those are still up there. But now we've also added least amount of out-of-stock items as possible. And so we're having lots of conversations with manufacturers, lots of conversations internally, figuring out storage, buying more, figuring out ways so we run out of stock less often. Now, live plants are going to continually be difficult because storing thousands and thousands and thousands of extra live plants, got to keep those alive. But white pads, not as hard, you know. So, yes. All right. Ooh, by the way, announcement for Dean's Fish Room. I hear he's in the chat. He's a dad. His zebra plecos finally gave birth. He's got baby zebra plecos. And if Dean, if you're listening, so you guys get to see Dean's Fish Room and how awesome it is, which I saw it all weekend and a lot of people filmed it. But if Dean's not too tired, Friday night, I'm going to go over and I'm going to film it, and he's got a lot of cool fish that I'm geeking out on. But all these people from out of town were in, and I didn't want to be like, sorry guys, I got to film, you guys can't. And so I know that I can go to Dean's whenever he'll allow me, which, you know, is often enough. And yeah, so I hope to go over there and film. Plus, there's a bunch of ice cream left over from the get-together. Not that we had a big get-together, but at one point, some ice cream was brought over, and it was good. So, super chat from Bill G. I just want to say thank you for inspiring me to set up an aquarium after a 20-year hiatus. I'm sitting here staring at a new 85-gallon as it cycles. Well, you clearly have patience because you were away for 20 years, so the cycle won't intimidate you. The only word of advice I'd offer, if you get some plants in there, once the plants start growing, you're cycled, you're good to go. That's my only word of advice, Bill. But thank you, and welcome back to the hobby, my friend. New member, Huckster Sam. Yeah, not Hucksteram, Huckster Sam. Welcome to the team. Ice cream at Dean's, that's right, Corvus. You went home to your baby. We went and had ice cream. Touche. So yes, but it's been a long time coming for Dean. He has been waiting to breed those zebra plecos for a very long time, and it's cool to see someone that you know has been working on something for years watch it actually happen. You know, so that's a very cool thing because there was a heater disaster that took out his first group of zebra plecos, cost him like $1,000, and that was like 2 years ago. Then he bought another group and grew them out again, and now he's got fry. Like, that's determination. I think that's what why Dean does so well with fish, is he's willing to take a horrible event, lose a bunch of money, and then reinvest and do it again. I think he doubled down harder. He's like, oh, I screwed up and I didn't do this? I'm going to try even harder now. You know, so it's always fun to see that. And I already called first dibs. I'm going to sell those zebra plecos at my store, so back off. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Why do I keep tanks on blocks? You're probably talking about old fish room videos because cinder blocks are very easy to build stands, and they're made to support houses, and they're sturdy, and they work awesome. So, yeah. Ooh, he does have. Bill G says, I do have plants coming from the Aquarium Co-op. I wonder how that happened. Indeed. I wonder. What do you recommend for a hardy, bright red plant in a tank without CO2? Bright red, you say? You have to have high light. I would go with Ludwigia species red. Shouldn't be too hard to track down. It's going to convert super hard. That's why we don't sell it, because people go, it's dying. And the reality is, like, yes, it's converting, and then it looks awesome. And yeah, so I recommend that. We can get it in. We don't get it in, but that one, and then I also like Limnophilia aromatica. Should be also fairly easy to track down. If you don't put enough light on it, kind of some pinks. Yeah. All right. Best plant for carpeting. I really like easy peasy carpeting. I like dwarf Sagittaria. Put a lot of light on it, carpets out fairly quick and easy. If you're really under low light, we don't sell it, but Marsilia minuta, very slow carpeting plant, but is awesome. Yes. Best place to purchase new tanks that aren't your typical black-rimmed PetSmart tanks. Tough finding nice big tanks. So if you're looking for big rimless tanks, I don't really know anyone that's really selling those that are going to be easy. Maybe like Waterbox and that kind of stuff, UNS, but they're going to be, an arm and a leg at least. So it's kind of hard. Yeah, I don't have a good recommendation for you. If I had it, I'd serve it up in a heartbeat. Any pre-filters that fit a Penguin 350? Yes, take off that square intake and put yourself a large pre-filter, but you're going to need the grommet. Watch the video and make yourself a little like grommet or adapter. Mr. Peter says, twice a previously healthy sword started looking sick, and when I pulled the roots, they were rotting. Any idea why this is happening? Hard to say, other than, maybe the substrate is getting clogged up. This is one of the reasons why I like gravel and that kind of stuff, is it can let oxygen in and it can stay aerated, and it typically doesn't go anaerobic on you. You have a very fine compacting substrate like sand or like ADA soil, that kind of stuff, you can run into some problems. If you're really worried about that, like you really don't want a problem with your next sword, you can use a chopstick and kind of aerate the roots a little bit. If you don't want to swap substrates, or you're already like, Corey, I already got like the biggest gravel alive, man, you don't know what you're talking about. That's what I would try. Without more info, I can only make assumptions, and that's what I would assume. So, can you buy fish from me online? No, you can't. We just aren't set up to sell fish, and yeah, we leave it to other people to do it. That is a long time no see for Daniel McCoy. How's it going, buddy? It's weird to see, now that I've been doing this for it's almost like 3 or 4 years now. Weird to see people like cycle back in and out. Like you just know that like either something in life happened, or they got out and now they're back, or whatever. But it's cool to see people like, oh yeah, I forgot, where did that person go? I forgot. Yes. Some more red plants. Let's see. What are some other good red plants that I enjoy? I really do like mermaid weed, or sawtooth hygro. It's a very spindly plant that turns a nice red or pink at the top when you give it a lot of light. I used to sell that plant a lot. I like Hygrophila pinnatifida a lot. We sell it, but it has not been coming in, as in like farms are just lagging producing it. But that one is kind of a rhizome plant, relatively easy to grow, likes a lot of iron and potassium, but is a nice purpley red plant. Kind of the red herrings, I would say that like the cardinal plant, purple and reds look awesome when they're growing out of water, but it's really hard to achieve underwater. Not that it can't be done, but your average person's going to struggle with that. What are some other, red and plants that are common, so I start talking about like Kufea and stuff, it's like, oh, how do I get that $30 rare plant? It's like, well, Alternantheria renekii or Scarlet Temple and Alternantheria renekii mini, those are pretty available in the hobby at this point. They're just kind of a basic red stem plant. You should be able to get them. Crypt Pink Flamingo, kind of sought after. Crypt Florida Sunset, not too hard to get a hold of. What are some more red plants? I'm trying to think of more off the top of my head that are, you know, that are good plants. Like there's a lot of plants that just aren't good. Like some of the myriophyllums that are like the red variety, they just collect so much fish poop and stuff. They don't look that good unless you're like constantly preening them. Am I wearing pants? No, I'm wearing shorts. Yes. Red dwarf lilies, tiger lotuses, those are some of my favorites. I really do love those. Trying to think of other red plants I truly enjoy. I do like what is it? Fluitens, the red root floater. I like that one quite a bit. Needs a lot of light though, like a lot. I think what else? Sturdy plant suggestions for convicts. They pull up my swords to redecorate. Go with Java ferns and Anubius attached to rock or wood. That's what I would do. You got your best chance there. You could also try hornwort. Hornwort's a floating plant. It never roots. It doesn't taste very good to them. Easy to grow. You can grow it almost like a foot a day if you're really giving the fertilizer to it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. In that instance, you could also grow stuff up out of the water like peace lilies, spider plant, pothos, bamboo. More, I'm sure of it. Why don't I sell nets online? Because they are irregular sizes to ship. So if you order, I don't have any nets in here, but oh, look what I found. It's the last one. The last white pad. No, the reason I don't sell nets is because they're like an awkward shape, and it becomes expensive to ship when you get awkward sized shapes. So part of the problem is because we do plants, we do rocks, we do sticks, we do dry goods. Like by the time you're like, I ordered this, a net, this, and you spent $70, we have to ship it to you for free, and this will be at least 2 different medium flat rate boxes. And then, because of their each medium flat rate, a net won't fit in either of the boxes those went into, so it would have been a 3rd box. And so we end up losing money on selling something like a net. And in general, oh geez, every pet store pretty much sells nets, including our own, and so they're not that hard to get a hold of. Wish we carried the bulb packs. We're working on it. We're working on a way to eliminate any molding that would happen. We used to carry them 5 years ago. We're working on a new method to package them, and we talked about that when we met with the farms when we went to Florida. We haven't rolled that out yet. We've got some new packaging coming out on like plant weights and some other stuff. Like there's a lot of things in motion that we're currently working on. You know, part of it is like if you're really into plants, you're going, you haven't done much with the plants. But on the back end, we've got like 40 projects that are all simultaneously like crawling up the ladder, slowly getting close to being done. And we just keep pushing the bar on all of those instead of like only doing one big project a year or something. We're doing like 40 over the course of a year, but they're all launching at different times and stuff. So, yeah. Bought 3 Zist filters. Why don't mine make noise? Everyone's got a different ear when it comes to it. For me personally, I believe the air coming out of it is the loud part, just like a sponge filter. You know, a sponge filter itself's not loud, but air bubbles are air bubbles. So, yeah. All right, well, I would assume my wife is home by now. Hopefully we're doing something for dinner. And, well, okay, someone brought up some plants I hadn't talked about. Rotalas, they're a very small leaf plant. Typically are red. They're talking about Rotala wallacei. There's Rotala indica. There's, what is it, Lutewigia? Is it Lutewigia Rotala arcuata cross? But for the most part, they're all stem plants. Like a light, like some iron. Don't plant them too close because then they kind of grow into each other and shade each other, but not too difficult. Most stem plants, so in much wiser words than I've ever said, like Tom Bard, a few other these plant nerds agree that most plants are weeds. They're literally weeds, as in they grow really fast, really easy to grow. And then there's plants that are actually difficult to grow, and that would be like crinums and some other stuff that don't just like make more and more and more and more and more all the time. And that would be things like Barclaya, a lot of the Pontigitans. All that stuff is not considered a weed. It is more of like a plant that you have to intentionally try and propagate. And so all these stem plants, being super fast growers, relatively are easy to grow when you have a decent light and a decent fertilizer package. It's kind of just like, yep, add some light, some fertilizer, and maybe a little bit of CO2, and you'll be successful with 90% of plants out there, whether you know what you're doing or not. Like, you just, oh yeah, I set the parameters, it's doing all right. So, all right, that's all I got for today. Hopefully it helps some people, and things to remember. Put dwarf aquarium, or dwarf baby tears, the tag for highlight, and add something to the mobile menu on the product description, because we found out there's nothing there, and that looks super weird, and it is confusing. So, thanks for hanging out. I won't be live next Wednesday because I'll be in Israel unless there is a wicked good internet connection and I can convince other people that's a good use of our time to do that. Or I might be filming a fish farm, and I have no idea what the time conversion is, because that might mean I'm live at 4 o'clock in the morning or something. I don't know. But it's been a good time. Buy all of my plants, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye. Hit the like on the way out, would you?